Power is not taken. It is seen, understood, and then claimed by those who dare. Most people never even notice the game. They wake up, follow routines, seek comfort, and then wonder why life feels like it's closing in around them. But there are others, few, quiet, precise, who study the currents of human behavior. They learn how to move through the world not by brute force, but by strategic awareness. These are the people Machiavelli was writing for. Not tyrants, not monsters, but those who refuse to live with their power buried under guilt, fear, and self-doubt. Machiavelli's teachings aren't for the cruel. They're for the awake, the ones who no longer want to be played by the world, but who choose to play it wisely. This is the transformation from victim to leader. To think like a leader means you first stop expecting fairness. Most people live in constant protest against the way the world is. They want people to be kinder. They want justice to be automatic. They want reward to follow effort like a law of nature. But Machiavelli knew what many still refuse to accept. The world doesn't care about your intentions. The world responds to leverage, positioning, perception. Those who understand this early stop wishing for a better game and start mastering the one that already exists. A victim complains about manipulation. A leader studies it, understands its patterns, and then wields it, sometimes even to protect others from it. You may think leadership is about titles, charisma, or dominance, but Machiavellian leadership is quieter than that. It begins with emotional discipline. If you can't control your reactions, someone else will. If you're outraged easily, guilt-tripped constantly, manipulated into action by fear or shame, you are not in control. You're a puppet. The first rule of leadership, then, is to take responsibility for your emotional state. Machiavelli warned rulers not to be overly merciful, not to expose themselves through excessive kindness, and not to make decisions from softness. This doesn't mean being cruel. It means not being controlled. In today's world, that translates into one simple idea. Stop apologizing for being strategic. In a society that rewards loud victimhood more than quiet competence, it's easy to fall into the trap of weakness disguised as virtue. You're told that being agreeable is good, that saying yes makes you likable, that being selfless is noble. But who benefits from that? Those who do not reciprocate your goodness. Those who use your guilt as leverage. Machiavelli would ask, what is more moral, to be taken advantage of by those who have none, or to protect your value so you can lead with strength? The answer is clear to anyone who wants to rise. Leadership is not about being liked. It's about being effective. The victim seeks validation. The leader seeks clarity. You don't ask, do they like me? You ask, does this serve the mission? Because leaders don't move according to moods or crowds. They move according to vision. And Machiavelli emphasized vision rooted in realism, not fantasy. The idealist builds castles in the clouds. The leader builds leverage with every step. Start asking yourself, what do people want from me? What do they fear? What do they admire? What are they blind to? These are the questions of a strategist, not a servant. A victim accepts whatever role they're given. A leader redefines the role entirely. Machiavelli believed that men are quick to forget kindness, but remember fear. This wasn't cynicism, it was observation. Human beings are not blank slates. We are wired to respond to pressure, power, and protection. If you want to influence others, you must accept human nature as it is, not as you wish it to be. If you believe everyone is inherently good, you will be shocked over and over again by betrayal. If you understand that people respond to incentive and hierarchy, you will lead with stability. The great mistake of the victim is assuming people will do what's right. The leader assumes people will do what benefits them. With this in mind, the leader creates conditions where the right thing aligns with self-interest. That's the genius of strategy, not to force people, but to make the beneficial irresistible. Manipulation with integrity. Influence with structure. It is possible, but it requires that you step out of the fog of moral confusion. Machiavelli never said, be evil. He said, be prepared. If you rely on the goodness of others, you are already conquered. This is not paranoia. It's preparation. Preparation is what makes a person calm in chaos. Because leadership is tested most not in times of ease, but in pressure. Who do people turn to when everything collapses? The one who doesn't flinch, the one who doesn't whine, the one who sees 5 moves ahead. To think like a leader, you must begin to see life as a series of negotiations, not entitlements. Every interaction carries weight. Every decision signals something. Weakness invites challenge. Certainty creates order. Silence, when used well, is louder than noise. Learn to hold it. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. But few understand what this truly means. Fear in this context is not terror, is respect. Predictability. Power. People don't respect those who change shape to please every demand. They respect those who are steady, who have standards, who do not beg for favor. If you want to stop being a victim, stop needing permission to be powerful. Power doesn't wait to be granted. It is claimed through competence and control. But here's the paradox. The more control you develop internally, the less you need to control others externally. The real leader doesn't dominate. They attract loyalty through presence, vision, and discipline. But they never forget the laws of nature. Never confuse the mask of kindness with the reality of interest. Everyone is driven by something. Your job as a leader is not to eliminate ego in others. It's to understand it, work with it, and sometimes against it. Don't try to change people. Change the conditions that shape their behavior. A victim screams at the world. A leader shapes it. Most people don't want to lead because it means being alone. It means being blamed. It means being watched. But Machiavelli understood that leadership is not chosen out of comfort. It is chosen out of necessity. If you're tired of being overlooked, used, underestimated, then you don't need more motivation. You need more understanding. Understand how people move. Understand what they need. Understand how systems run. Then learn how to insert yourself quietly, effectively, powerfully. Never announce your strategy. Let others underestimate you. The best leaders move in silence until it is time to speak, and when they speak, it is final. If you feel like a victim now, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've been uninformed. You've followed advice that rewarded you with nothing but burnout. Now is the time to switch paradigms. Not from good to evil, but from passive to intentional. Everything Machiavelli wrote can be condensed into one idea. Stop reacting, start ruling. Rule your time, rule your thoughts, rule your responses, rule your direction. Victims wait, leaders act. The world belongs to those who move. When you stop waiting for fairness and start preparing for reality, your entire life begins to shift. You no longer assume people will treat you how you treat them. You observe, you listen, and you act only when it serves the greater objective. Leaders don't fight every battle. They choose the ones that matter. A victim reacts to everything. A leader filters. In silence, they watch people reveal themselves. In restraint, they gain the upper hand. Power is often a matter of patience. Machiavelli knew that many lose not because they're incapable, but because they move too soon or too loudly. A ruler must know when to strike, but more importantly, when not to. If you're easily provoked, you will always be predictable. Predictability in the hands of your enemies is a death sentence. Learn to let things pass, not out of weakness, but as part of the long game. Emotional reactivity is a luxury leaders cannot afford. Every time you let anger, jealousy, or pride dictate your actions, you surrender your position to someone else. Self-control, then, is not just virtue, it's weaponry. The one who controls himself commands others without saying a word. That's why Machiavelli said appearances matter. People don't follow your thoughts, they follow your presence. If you carry yourself like someone worthy of attention, people will subconsciously comply. Posture, tone, stillness, intention, these communicate faster than language. Speak less but mean more. Apologize less but improve more. Seek less praise but earn more respect. The leader does not need to be loved to lead. They need to be clear. Clear in mind, in speech, in values. Confusion breeds weakness. Certainty, even in silence, is power. And power, when grounded in wisdom, is leadership. There's a reason the masses follow without question and only a handful ever lead. Most people have been trained to feel first, react second, and think last. But leadership demands a reversal of that order. First you observe, then you calculate, and only then do you act with precision. Acting on instinct may work in moments of danger, but sustained leadership requires intention. Machiavelli was clear that fortune plays a role in success, but it is nothing without preparation. The victim blames fate. The leader anticipates it. Those who rise to the top aren't lucky, they're ready. They know that chaos is inevitable and that advantage lies not in avoiding storms, but in navigating them better than anyone else. The modern world rewards those who can remain calm while others panic, those who can speak sense while others scream. In this silence lies authority, not the kind that is forced, but the kind that is recognized. That's what Machiavelli meant when he said it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. The leader who commands respect through strength of mind and mastery of self will always be more effective than the one who seeks approval. Love is fragile, and when it fades, you're left exposed. But respect is rooted in consistency and competence. You earn it by being someone people cannot ignore. To think like a leader, you must stop consuming the world passively. Everything is a lesson. Every betrayal, every compliment, every negotiation is data. A leader is always decoding, always learning, always adapting. The victim sees rejection and collapses inward. The leader sees rejection and studies it. Why did it happen? What can be adjusted? What pattern is forming here? Machiavellian thinking is not about emotionless manipulation. It's about strategic evolution. You're allowed to feel. You're not allowed to be ruled by your feelings. There's a vast difference. The one who governs himself becomes the one others follow. That is why the transformation begins within. You can never lead others if you have not led yourself through hardship, resistance, and discipline. The leader is forged in discomfort. He does not run from it, he invites it. Because pain, when used properly, becomes precision. Every time life pressures you, you are given a choice. React impulsively like a victim or respond intelligently like a strategist. Most choose the first path. They vent, they complain, they lash out. But a leader pauses. He takes the hit without flinching, not because he is numb, but because he is focused. The mission is bigger than his mood. The outcome is more important than his ego. This is not about pretending you don't feel. It's about making sure your feelings serve your vision, not sabotage it. This is the foundation of self-mastery, and without it, there is no leadership. People will test you. They will lie to you. They will underestimate you. Machiavelli never said this was unfair. He said it was inevitable. If you expect the game to be clean, you've already lost. The world is not a place of moral order. It is a field of power dynamics. This does not mean you have to become corrupt. It means you have to become clear. The clearer you are, the harder you are to manipulate. When you know your direction, distractions become obvious. When you know your value, flattery becomes transparent. When you know your limits, temptations become harmless. Clarity is a shield, and it is earned through solitude, study, and honest self-reflection. Most people are too distracted to ever reach this clarity. They drown in content, in opinions, in the need to be seen. The leader, however, cultivates stillness. In stillness, he plans. In solitude, he strengthens. Machiavelli understood that public influence is built on private preparation. You cannot improvise power. You must rehearse it, refine it, reinforce it daily through thought and discipline. Victims want the crown without the weight. Leaders accept the weight before they ever reach the crown. That is why most people fail when they get power. They haven't trained for it. Power without structure collapses. Leadership without self-awareness corrupts. But if you begin by building yourself, you cannot be shaken by the outside world. In this age of loud opinions and emotional volatility, true leadership looks like restraint. It looks like patience. It looks like strategy. It looks like knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. People follow those who seem in control, not because they are always right, but because they do not panic. Even when uncertain, they project composure. This is not deception, it's design. Machiavelli believed that appearances shape perceptions and perceptions shape reality. If people believe you are strong, you become stronger. If people sense you are unstable, they stop listening. The leader crafts the story people tell about him, not through lies, but through consistent signals. Be the calm in the chaos. Be the structure in the storm. That is what people crave. Leadership is not about dominating others. It's about aligning them. Machiavelli understood that the most effective rulers weren't tyrants. They were tacticians. They knew how to use power with balance, how to reward loyalty, how to punish betrayal without hesitation, and how to make people feel that following them was the safest, smartest option. The victim tries to convince. The leader simply becomes necessary. That is the ultimate power, not to demand obedience, but to be the anchor others depend on. But you cannot become this by accident. You must study power, study yourself, and study the world around you. You must read between the lines of every conversation. You must ask why people act the way they do. You must learn from history, from psychology, from failure. Every leader has scars, but unlike the victim, he doesn't hide them. He uses them. He builds his philosophy on them. Because every time he was betrayed, he learned. Every time he was overlooked, he sharpened his skills. Every time he lost, he adjusted. The victim collapses under pain. The leader is sculpted by it. Machiavellian leadership is not cold. It is calculated. It is not emotionless. It is emotion mastered. The victim believes that emotions justify action. The leader believes that outcomes justify the effort. You cannot lead if you are always reacting. You cannot inspire if you're always apologizing. You cannot command if you're always asking. Stand up. Be still. Speak with purpose. Move with design. Lead not just with words, but with presence. People watch more than they listen. They mirror what you radiate. Radiate clarity, confidence, and calm, and you will change the room without even speaking. This is leadership. This is the end of the victim, and this is where your power begins. When people see you no longer chase validation, they begin to question why. That curiosity becomes respect. That respect becomes influence. But you must stay consistent. The victim wavers depending on who is watching. The leader stays centered no matter who is present. Consistency builds reputation. Reputation builds momentum. Machiavelli emphasized that a ruler must appear virtuous even if he is not always able to be so. Why? Because perception often matters more than truth. If people believe you are stable, wise, and capable, they treat you that way. And over time, that treatment becomes your reality. The victim seeks to be understood. The leader seeks to be effective. And in effectiveness, they're understood naturally. Most people spend their lives reacting to the emotions of others. They are pulled into arguments, swayed by opinions, distracted by drama. A leader observes all of this from a higher place. He doesn't dive into every fire. He evaluates the cost. What does this conversation achieve? What does this alliance threaten? What is gained by speaking now or by waiting? The mind of a leader is a chessboard, not just tactics, but timing, not just strength, but subtlety. And yet, this doesn't mean the leader is distant or cold. On the contrary, because he doesn't drown in petty emotions, he has more energy to lead with intention. He listens deeply. He sees through people. He rewards loyalty in ways that inspire more of it. He doesn't lead through fear alone, but with a blend of strength and foresight that makes people feel safe under his direction. This is a forgotten art in a time when everyone wants power, but no one wants responsibility. Victims avoid responsibility because it exposes them. Leaders embrace it because it refines them. When you take responsibility for your words, your thoughts, your outcomes, you take control of your life. That control gives you options. Options give you freedom. And freedom gives you the ability to lead without compromise. Machiavelli knew that those who ruled well were rarely ruled by anything within themselves. Mastery of others begins with mastery of self. Every day, you either reinforce your leadership or your victimhood. You choose in how you react, in how you plan, in how you hold yourself when no one is watching. That's where real power begins, not on a stage, but in silence. The silent moments define you more than the loud ones. It's easy to pretend you have discipline when others are watching. It's easy to speak like a leader when there's applause. But the real test happens in isolation, when you could slip, when you could delay, when you could justify weakness because no one will see. That's when you either build the foundation of a leader or the habits of a victim. Machiavelli taught that it's better to act decisively than to wait for ideal conditions. The victim waits for permission, for signs, for support. The leader moves first. He understands that the world rarely gives green lights. Most of the time, you have to move through red and make it work anyway. Leaders initiate. They don't wait for clarity to come to them. They create it. In doing so, they create gravity. People are drawn to direction. They crave conviction. When someone walks into a room knowing exactly who they are and what they stand for, the air shifts. People lean in. That's leadership. Not barking orders, not demanding attention, but exuding presence that speaks for itself. And that presence comes from knowing. Not arrogance, not loud ego, but quiet clarity. This is what separates a strong mind from a scattered one. The victim overthinks, doubts, hesitates, rewinds conversations endlessly in their mind. The leader reflects, yes, but briefly and purposefully. He extracts the lesson and moves on. There is no time for self-pity in leadership. There is no reward for drowning in regret. You take the hit, you process it, and you keep moving. If you stop for too long, you lose momentum. And when you lose momentum, you lose authority, not just over others, but over yourself. Discipline is not always loud. Often it is silent, invisible, boring. Waking up early when no one is keeping score. Choosing the harder conversation when avoidance is easier. Saying no when yes would feel better in the moment. That's where leadership is forged. In micro decisions, in resisting temptation, in prioritizing purpose over comfort. Comfort is what the victim chases. Leadership is what the strategist chooses. The two roads rarely overlap. There's a price to think like a leader. You will be misunderstood. You will be envied. You will be judged harshly by those who don't understand what you're building. And you must accept that. Machiavelli warned against the need to be loved. The desire to be universally liked is one of the greatest threats to effective leadership. The crowd is fickle. One day they praise you. The next they attack. If you build your confidence on applause, you will collapse when it stops. Leaders do not seek identity from the outside. They define themselves internally and then let the world catch up or not. It doesn't matter. The mission remains. But a mission requires more than intention. It requires structure, strategy, systems. The victim hopes to get lucky. The leader prepares to win. He doesn't rely on emotion to carry him. He creates routines that function even when he doesn't feel motivated. He builds environments that reinforce his focus. He eliminates unnecessary decisions. He guards his attention like it's his most valuable resource, because it is. Where your attention goes, your power follows. If it's scattered, so is your influence. Leaders concentrate. They know when to expand, but more importantly, they know when to say no. Saying no is one of the strongest signals of leadership, not in cruelty, but in clarity. You can't do everything. You can't please everyone. And if you try, you will become exhausted, resentful, and ineffective. A leader chooses carefully what to engage with, who to give energy to, and what to ignore. And in that refusal lies power. Power is not just action, it's restraint. A leader does not react to every insult. He does not defend himself at every accusation. Silence is not weakness when it is strategic. Sometimes it is the most deafening response. But this silence is earned through self-trust. Victims fill silence with noise because they are uncomfortable with themselves. Leaders sit in silence because they've made peace with who they are. They don't need to fill every gap with words. Their energy does the talking. Their record speaks. Their direction is clear. And that clarity terrifies the insecure. Machiavelli understood that insecurity in others is a potential threat to any leader. It festers in a sabotage. This is why a true leader not only builds himself, but also studies the weaknesses in others, not to exploit them cruelly, but to manage them wisely. If someone on your team is ruled by envy, you do not confront them directly. You give them a title, a role, a sense of importance that soothes the threat. Strategy over confrontation. That is Machiavellian thinking. You don't always fight. You reposition. You don't destroy. You redirect. Power lies not in brute force, but in elegance. A leader sees 10 steps ahead, so he doesn't panic in step 2. Victims think in seconds. Leaders think in sequences. And because of that, they appear calm even when under pressure. That calm becomes their brand. It becomes their armor. When others break, they bend. When others shout, they watch. When others blame, they build. This is the discipline that makes leadership inevitable over time. And it starts in the mind. How you interpret stress. How you interpret conflict. Victims take everything personally. Leaders filter. Is this useful? Is this a distraction? Is this part of the pattern? They are detectives of their own life. They do not assume. They investigate. They do not guess. They verify. And because of this, their moves are more efficient. They waste less energy. They recover faster. They rise quicker. This isn't magic. It's mindset. It's repetition. The only thing standing between you and the leader you want to become is how long you're willing to live in discomfort. Can you stay focused when you're not being praised? Can you stay kind when no one notices? Can you stay disciplined when there's no deadline? If yes, you're on the path. Because leadership is not a moment. It is a series of habits stacked in silence. When you understand this, you stop chasing highlights. You begin building foundations. You stop performing for others and start showing up for your future self. That is the shift from victim to strategist, from pawn to player, from spectator to sovereign. This is what Machiavelli pointed to, not cruelty, but clarity, not manipulation, but understanding, not dominance, but direction. It is not about becoming something else. It is about remembering what you were always capable of before the world told you to be small, agreeable, and afraid. The world needs more leaders. But before you lead others, you must lead yourself out of the patterns that keep you reactive, emotional, and exhausted. That is the first victory. And every victory after that becomes inevitable. Leadership begins the moment you stop asking for less pressure and start asking for more precision. Most people waste their energy wishing circumstances were easier. Leaders use that same energy to sharpen their tools. If the world is hard, they get harder. Not in cruelty, but in resilience. Not in numbness, but in preparation. Machiavelli didn't call for emotionless rulers. He called for emotionally disciplined ones. There's a difference. To feel is human, but to be ruled by feeling is a choice. And that choice separates the ones who break from the ones who bend. Every day offers you dozens of small chances to lead. How you respond to delays, how you handle conflict, how you treat people who can't benefit you, how you speak about yourself when no one's listening. These small choices build identity. And over time, identity becomes destiny. The victim believes that leadership comes from opportunity. The leader knows it comes from repetition. You don't become respected by accident. You don't earn influence because you demand it. You earn it because people watch you refuse to fold in the face of difficulty again and again without fanfare. That's what makes your presence heavier than your words. And in a world addicted to noise, a quiet presence rooted in clarity becomes magnetic. You don't need to dominate a room to lead it. You need to understand it. Know the dynamics, read the people, speak last, listen first. Machiavellian wisdom isn't about power for power's sake. It's about order, about effectiveness, about playing the long game instead of the emotional one. Most importantly, it's about seeing things for what they are, not what you wish they were. And once you start doing that, you stop being a victim of the world and start shaping it. The world doesn't wait for you to become ready. It moves with or without you. You can spend your life reacting to it, hoping it softens, begging it to be fair, or you can rise. Rise with discipline, rise with vision, rise with the understanding that the game is already being played, and the only question is whether you're being moved or making moves. Machiavelli didn't write for the average person. He wrote for those who could carry the burden of clarity, those who were willing to think deeper, act smarter, and lead when everyone else followed. You don't need to be born with power. You only need the courage to claim it. And that begins the moment you stop seeing yourself as a victim. You're not too late. You're not too soft. You're not too damaged. What you are is responsible for your next move, for your mindset, for what you become starting now. Leadership isn't waiting for you out there. It's waiting for you to look in the mirror and stop hesitating. The world belongs to those who choose to lead themselves first. If this message struck something deep in you, it's because you already know you're capable of more. Don't just listen. Apply it. Sharpen your thinking. Raise your standards. Refuse to shrink. And if this helped you see yourself differently, even for a moment, then share it with someone else who needs to hear it.